everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Smith and Hesson. And we've got a couple to go before Christmas, but it's really busy on the international cricketing front. So a lot of good things to talk about with Mike Hesson down in Dunedin. And Mike, a test match going on at the Basin Reserve at the moment without Kane Williamson, which I guess is just a fact of modern life that fathers like to be around at the birth of their kids these days. I remember doing this when it probably first happened, when Jeff Boycott was commentating with me, and he was talking about Michael Vaughan, who actually left the field of play to go to the birth of his child in Leeds, because that's where the test match was played. And of course, he's a Yorkshire guy. And Jeff Boycott said, "Where's he going? He's the captain of England." He said this live on air, actually. Where's the lad going? He said, "Well, he's going to the birth of his child." He said, well, "He can't do that. He did his bit 9 months ago." So that was
wow.
Jeff. That was Jeff Boycott. Imagine that, and it kind of hit the headlines. But if you said it today, it would be bizarrely taken. So, okay, this test match without Kane Williamson, of course, Tom Latham in charge for the second time after his debut test in Sydney didn't go so well. What I wanted to talk about is not so much the game specific, but roles of New Zealand players and where you see they're at. And the development, first of all, of Kyle Jamison. Now, how good is this guy so far? He hasn't done a lot wrong. Is he a bully batsman? I mean, he's quite clearly talented. Is he going to bash poor attacks around? Is he in a situation where we could be looking at the next Chris Cairns type player for New Zealand with that strength?
Look, I think he's definitely developing really well, and I think the way both his skills have improved over the last 12 months has been exceptional. And I'll come back to the bowling in a minute, but from a batting point of view, I think he's a little bit better than that in terms of just bashing poor attacks. I think he will be challenged by better attacks with a newer ball in terms of that. When sides especially go hard at him short, he's a big guy, therefore you can become a big target. So he will become challenged in that. And I guess his next development, as I said, is being able to score against the better bowlers. But certainly evolving nicely. He's got a background as a batsman. Used to open the batting in lower grades, certainly school grades. So he's got a technique that's developing. And all he needs to do now is get used to the pace, get used to the rhythm of Test cricket. I think in terms of looking at a pure rounder at the moment, I think it's a little bit premature, but certainly exciting. Good ball striker. I compare him with Colin de Grandhomme, and Colin can actually take on the new bowlers, the new ball, and that second new ball is so important for somebody that bats around that 7-8 role, and they've got to be able to kick on. But that's the next stage of development for Kyle Jamison. Just really impressive for me. It's more with the ball though, Smithy. We saw last year against India the fact he was swinging the ball away to Virat Kohli. Was able to apply his plans for long periods of time. I think he nicked him off at first slip after setting him up. And then this year we see him come back, and with the new ball, he bowls a big in-swinger. So he's actually evolving his game. He's gone away. He's gone, look, I'm not just people are going to read me, and I can't just rely on my bounce and my height. I actually have to bring some different skills. So any player that's on the scene and wants to continue to grow their game is exciting, and to have one who's 6'6" is something to behold.
Well, I like him because of that build in particular, because he's going to be able to get bounce on a lot of surfaces with your current attack. I mean, you look at bounce, you think about Neil Wagner, but it's a different kind of bounce, because a guy who's 6'6" and you put his arm on top gets a more steepling bounce than a likes of a Wagner has to bowl very, very short from his stature to get it up around head height. Okay, it works for him. But I just think this guy's got a bit more of a surprise element, especially while he's new on the block. So I look at the bowling stocks. Matt Henry is still, going to come back from injury at some stage. De Grandhomme in the all-round role. In terms of the seamers, the quicker bowlers, probably as healthy as we've ever been.
Yeah, I think so, Smithy. And I think, we've actually got a damn good test side at the moment. And you're right, from a bowling point of view, we could roll out any 4 of those 7 or 8 guys you've mentioned, and will be incredibly demanding. And I like the contrast. I mean, you talk about Neil Wagner, the fact he's shorter and skiddier and quick. And I mean, look, he's risen to number 2 in the World Test rankings, which is just exceptional. He's just playing his 50th Test match. And, it wasn't too long ago we thought he was that sort of one-trick pony or just filling a void, and he's been so much better than that. You add in Jamison, who can land the ball on the same length, but, Wags is bowling a length that's hitting the top of the stumps, and Jamison's hitting you underneath the ribs. So just a real contrast. We know the beauty of Tim and Trent, the fact they swing it differently, left arm, right arm, and you combine those guys. We're damn fortunate. We've got Lockie Ferguson there too, who's chomping at the bit to get an opportunity. And we saw how well he done in that T20 series. So have you seen it any stronger, Smithy?
I'm not sure I have. I think I've seen great bowlers and great combinations for New Zealand over my time of either playing or commentating, but I'm not quite sure I've seen it in those particular areas, yes. But I'm craving a spinner. I'm craving a spinner who demands to be picked like a Nathan Lyon, who, even if the surface is green, you still include him because he's so clever at what he does and he can still create opportunities for you, particularly in the second innings of the game. So I'm still craving for one of those to say it's a genuinely great test bowling lineup, but certainly in those areas, I think we've got that covered. I like also a little bit about the batting. Of course, no Kane Williamson in this test match. But there's a thing which I class now as the shadow looming over some of these batsmen. And the shadow for me, I'll nickname him that, is Devon Conway. And the reason I say that is all of a sudden the healthiest batting sides in the world or sports sides in the world have pressure behind those who are the incumbents. And this guy is a shadow for me. So Will Young, an important second opportunity for him in this test match. And the other bloke I'm starting to think about very seriously under pressure here is Henry Nicholls. Really, this week of cricket for him, very, very important.
Yeah, look, it is. And so much so I looked through the numbers too and sort of thought, are we just sort of trying to find somebody to look at? But when Henry Nicholls, averages 40 in Test cricket, which for a number 5, New Zealand number 5, is exceptional, 600s. And the thing that I noted is that New Zealand's top 5 is the best performing average-wise over the last 2.5 years in Test cricket. So to have Devon Conway, the shadow, as you said, sitting there going, crikey, I'm trying to find an opening. We're looking at Henry Nicholls because he's supposedly the weak link, but he's done pretty damn well. And I know he nicked off in the last game. Didn't have a great tour of Australia, but overall his last 2.5 years for New Zealand have been amazing. So I'm delighted they're giving Will Young another opportunity. He's been hanging in the wings for a long time, and he will want to grab that opportunity during this Test match. I think he would like to bat second if he gets a choice, rather than having to bat first on a green one, which he had to at Hamilton. Love to see him get a score, and then you've genuinely got 7 or 8 batsmen who can step in at any time, and then you've actually got real depth in numbers. So. I think the Blackcaps are a pretty formidable Test lineup at the moment. We always look back to Australia in terms of being judged in Australia, but in New Zealand, we are very, very good.
First Test between Australia and India starts Thursday here on Channel 52. I can't wait for it, to be perfectly honest. And Australia having won the one-day series, of course, India coming back and notching up the T20 series, 2-1. Steve Smith, the talking point here again is about Steve Smith and the captaincy, because they gave the captaincy when Finch was not there to Matthew Wade. Why not give Steve Smith the captaincy for me? He's the best qualified player in Australia to captain that side. I understand there'll be nervousness from the public, there'll be nervousness from the media, and maybe some nervousness within the group of fellow players who were there or thereabouts when the sandpaper issue took its place. But if you're going to play Steve Smith, if you're going to allow him to wear the baggy green and play, let him be the captain. I just don't see a problem with that from this side of the Tasman anyway. Where do you sit on it?
Yeah, well, his ban finished in March, so you would like to think that they've been through a process since then to make sure that if they need him, that he's ready. And it doesn't sound like that's happened. When Aaron Finch was not available, there was talk saying, well, we've got to go through a process with Steve Smith to sort of reintegrate him into that role, and he was considered, but we're sort of going through that process. So, when it finished in March and then, we're obviously into, December, you would have thought that process would have taken place. Admittedly, we have had a period of COVID, which, could have had an impact during that for sure. But that reintegration, if they see him as a future leader, you'd like to think that would be well advanced. I think the other part of that, if it was one-day cricket, I think it would have made more sense. T20, he's not guaranteed to be in that T20 side at the World Cup, because they've got so much depth around that spot. So that might have been a factor potentially. But to be fair, Matthew Wade's not guaranteed either, and he took on that. So, that potentially contradicts that argument as well. But look, I would have thought he was the obvious choice, but this process they've got to go through, I'm not sure where they're at.
No, I don't know either, actually. And the other thing, of course, David Warner was heavily involved in that. He will not be playing in this test match coming up. The abductor muscle is not going to be right in time. They've announced that. But they've got all sorts of issues at the top of the order. They've got an out-of-form Joe Burns who'll probably get a lifeline because of that anyway. They may have given him the opportunity. They've got Will Pucovski, who's under an injury cloud. This is the kid with the long hair that they've been talking about as being one of the hottest properties in Australian cricket at the top of the order for quite some time. He got scorned against India, and so he's got issues with concussion. What I didn't realise until I looked into this fellow a little bit more, Mike, he's had 8 concussions. 8 concussions. I mean, man, first of all, that's dangerous. Second of all, clearly got an issue with the short ball because he just keeps getting hit by it. But 8 concussions, that's outrageous.
Yeah, and he's also had mental health issues. So, it's not a great career path. Opening the batting against a new ball where you are going to get bounced a lot, potentially you are going to get hit, and it's incredibly challenging. So the fact that he's come back to the game and he's done so well in domestic cricket to keep forcing his case, he's obviously hugely talented and he's obviously working through some of those issues he's got. But everything you hear about him is that he's a very calm character, hugely... very much down the Labuschagne Smith mould in terms of just loves batting, hugely passionate about the game, and they see him as a long-term prospect. So I really hope they can sort out these concussion issues, whether it be a technical issue. I haven't seen enough of him bat, to be honest, to be able to make that assessment. What I've seen, though, is pretty easy on the eye, lovely timer of the ball. And I know they've got him in the squad. They're hoping he'll play this Australia A game just to get a little bit more confidence back. But yeah, you're right. 8 concussions. This potentially makes it number 9. It's high risk, and I hope he comes through. But I'm not so sure they're going to play Joe Burns. Smithy, I've sort of got a bit of an inkling. I heard the other day, maybe Matthew Wade might move to the top because they're so keen on playing this young lad Cam Green, who's a hugely talented player, and he's huge as well. He's 6'7". Middle order bat, bowls 140 plus. Won't bowl a lot, but he's come out of some. I think he got 197 in a Shield game earlier on in the year. I think they're pretty desperate to play him. So if they don't see Joe Burns playing when David Warner comes back, don't be surprised if he misses out.
It's an interesting one for me. I saw a bit of Cameron Green batting in the Australian 11 versus the Indian 11 match just the other day, and he looks very, very calm at the crease. And I was trying to think when Australia had a genuine quick bowler who could bat in the top 6, because I've always, about Australian sides, I've always existed without that, both Kapil Dev, Imran Khan, all-round type player over the years, because I've been able to create all-round skills in other areas, i.e. like, the power of a Gilchrist who can float. So it'll be interesting to see if this kid, Cameron Green, kicks on and if he gets a chance in this series. We know that Virat Kohli is only playing the 1 and then he's going, which means that Ajinkya Rahane has been nominated to take over the leadership. Man, in terms of sporting shoes to fill, probably the biggest pair that you'll ever see, particularly in a series Australia against India. Ajinkya Rahane, tell us a wee bit about this fellow and his ability or his capability to take over that role.
Yeah, he's sort of been groomed in that role for a while, but quite a different character to Virat Kohli, who's obviously, very verbose and basically you've got a camera on him all the time because he's so he shows his emotions on his sleeve, whereas Ajinkya Rahane is completely different. He'll be very much that duck paddling underwater, very calm. The guys really love him. They respect him. He's performed very well when he's come back into the Indian side. I know, he scored runs the other day as well in that match you alluded to. He looks in good form, but he's quite unruffled. So he'll just go about his work. He'll be very much under the radar. He'll be quite methodical in terms of his planning. So he'll stick to the plans for long periods of time. And he has a nice feel for the group. So, any Indian side, you've got, like any international side, you've got a lot of egos, a lot of different personalities that you need to manage. He'll just do it in a nice, calm fashion. But be interesting to see what he does when they're under pressure. Obviously, he does majority of the time when he has done it, it's been spin based. Whereas now he's going to have to do it where he's sort of 70-80% of his overs are going to have to be pace. So will be interesting to see how he adapts in terms of his mannerisms over there when he's under pressure.
This test series for me is whether the Australian top order can get exposed by the Indian new ball attack. For me, that's what it's all about, because if Australia get a start, particularly if they bat first, they get 400 and 500 plus, and then from an Indian point of view, you're really just trying to save the game. So they have to make inroads early when they get that opportunity. How do you envisage at this point, still a week out, few games, a few practice sessions, the odd game to be played in between times, how do you envisage the Indian bowling attack to look at this point? And I'm talking here maybe about the third or fourth seamer, Yadav being involved.
Yeah, well, I mean, Shami and Bumrah, you're right, they'll open up. I think that's pretty clear. And then Umesh Yadav and Mohammad Siraj, so both actually RCB boys who I spent a bit of time with, over the last few months. Siraj, swings the ball much later, tends to bowl a fuller length, a bit more of a wrist sort of a bowler, can bowl a good bumper, whereas Umesh Yadav's probably quicker through the air, so his airspeed's a little bit quicker, but he's more along the wicket type of bowler. So it depends what they're after. I think with the pink ball, obviously under lights, I think that swing element's going to be critical. Guys that are comfortable bowling that fuller length. And then I think they'll still go with one spinner. And we've seen at Adelaide Oval where it still holds, still gets good bounce. So the spinner will be in play. I think they'll go with Jadeja. They tend to go with him overseas as opposed to Ashwin. And obviously from a batting point of view, they get a little bit more out of Jadeja. So for me, that's the obvious bowling attack.
The Big Bash is underway already. Hobart having early success at home, and it brings in a couple of things to me. I want you to run through these crazy new rules, which I keep going back to the old saying that you hear time after time, if it ain't broken, why fix it? So they've come in with these innovative rules, Mike. So I think I might get your impressions on that first, and then I'm going to ask you about another thing, which we won't see too much in Test cricket, but we will in T20 cricket, and that is the switch hit. But there's a bit of debate going around about that. But first, these new rules. Tell us about them.
Well, I don't like them. I'll put my flag up just on that point, because I think cricket is already as confusing as it is. We've got three forms of the game. We've now introduced the 100 in England, which is a fourth, and now all of a sudden, we're sort of bastardising a product that works really well. Firstly, the one is that you split the power play, so rather than being 6 overs, it goes 4, and then the batting side can choose where the extra 2 are. And that's, brings in another tactical element. Absolutely it does. And from the playing point of view and a coaching point of view, it's fun and it's interesting. But it's also, quite confusing for the viewer. The other thing is that you can substitute a player in the first 10 overs of the first innings. So last night, Hobart Hurricanes, I think, was 73 for 3, and they had the choice of whether they would remove one of their bowlers and bring an extra batting cover because they were struggling. They chose not to do that, and the Sydney Sixers also chose the same. So nothing happened. I guess it does help if you're 5 for 40 and you're in all sorts of trouble. Rather than the game being dead, it does give you an opportunity to bring somebody in. So that's the reason. And equally from a bowling point of view, if you leave yourself a bit short and the opposition are flying, then you can make a change. And the third one is that you get 3 points for a win of the game, and you get 1 point if you're leading after 10 overs. So, for example, if you end up getting 190 the first side, but you're only on 85 after 10, the side chasing, if they only need 1 point or they don't think they can get 190, they'll just try and beat 85 in 10 overs. It doesn't matter how many wickets you lose. So therefore, you can go hard and just get a bonus point, which is a bit strange if you're already starting to do that before you've even got to the 10 over stage. You're already seeing that as a byproduct of the game. So I'm, like I said, I saw them. I understand that we always need to try and evolve the game and make it more exciting for the viewer, and bring in tactical elements and so forth. For me, though, I would have loved to have seen these trialled at a lower level, at a level to see if they actually work. I mean, I think back to when we used to have the super sub, and they introduced it in international cricket, and then worked out that it was fundamentally flawed, because if you won the toss, you got the super sub. If you didn't, you didn't. So it was a fait accompli, like it was a waste of time. So I would have liked to see it trialled rather than all of a sudden they've extended the Big Bash. It's an amazing tournament, but to chuck all these new rules, personally, call me a traditionalist, but I'm a little bit miffed by them, really.
Yeah, I agree, and I think when it gets to playoff time, we'll see all sorts of Mickey Mouse scenarios with sides needing a point here or a point there, just not even worrying about the 20 over scenario, just going for it. So I think over a period of time we'll get a better idea how to judge it. But for me, I was pretty happy with how things were tracking along with T20 cricket anyway. And don't forget, 2 New Zealanders involved this year, folks. We've got Colin Munro at the Perth Scorchers, and Adam Milne, who we haven't really heard of too much, but Shane Bond's taken him over to his franchise. And as I said before, I just wanted to get your opinion on the switcher from a technical point of view. Is it fair on the bowlers? There's been the debate that a bowler should be able to change his approach halfway through his run-up. Should he be allowed to bowl around the wicket? He might nominate that he's going to bowl over the wicket, but if he can see a guy going into a switch hit position, should he stop? Can he stop? Can he change his approach? And is it too much favoured? I mean, it's a hell of a shot to watch, and it's a hell of a skill to be able to play it. But is it fair?
Oh, look, I love it personally. I think if a bowler's able to run in and change from right hand to left handed, still stay over or around, because he's still, then good luck to him. I think if he's good enough to do that, you've got to adjust, and it brings an exciting element. I think the fact that guys are becoming so good at it that they keep the hands in the same position generally if they want to go from high to low, whereas if they want to hit it for 6, they switch the hands and the feet. So there's so many different ways of playing it, and it takes a bit of guts. If you've got the skill to be able to do it, you manipulate the field. Sure, you bring in wicket taking opportunities because it can be a high risk shot if you're not very good at it. For me, it adds to the game, and I think if you're good enough to do it, excuse me. The Dunedin winter's taking its toll. Sorry, it's summer. Taking its toll on my throat. But I think if you're good enough to do it, Smithy, fair play to you. And they removed the wide line, which I think brings the bowlers, sort of evens it up a little bit, whether it be left leg side or offside. Personally, I love it. I don't know. Do you reckon you could have played it? You love going square of the wicket, sweeping?
No, mate, I'm not sure I'm strong enough on both wrists. Actually, it's been around a while. I think Kevin Peterson employed it against the New Zealand touring side quite some years ago, and it raised a few question marks even at that point. But now, of course, the best exponent by far seems to be Glenn Maxwell, who just absolutely nails it on some of those big Australian grounds, and that's something to behold, really. Okay, Mike, plenty for people to digest on in the last half hour or so. As usual, great talking to you. Get the throat right, and we'll catch up after this current test match and just see if the West Indies can show a bit of fight this time round. It would be nice. Cheers, mate. Go well.
Absolutely. Cheers, Smithy. Thank you. Look after yourself.